President Trump floats $2,000 tariff dividend for Americans amid rising revenue and legal challenges. President Donald Trump announced this week that his administration is considering sending direct payments of up to $2,000 to Americans, which he calls a dividend to the people funded by the rapidly growing revenues from his expansive tariff policies. The proposal, made during an interview on One America News Network, OAN, on Thursday, introduces a new dimension to his America First economic platform, but also arrives amid a crucial legal challenge to the tariffs themselves. The proposal direct payments from tariff revenue. The central idea behind the plan is to directly distribute a portion of the revenue collected from newly imposed tariffs on imported goods back to U.S. households. Payment size. The president suggested the potential rebate checks could range from $1,000 to $2,000 per person. Funding source. The funds would come from the significant customs duties collected since the administration's new, broad tariffs were implemented starting in April 2025. This includes the universal 10% tariff and other reciprocal tariffs on various goods. Revenue estimates. Trump asserts that the new tariffs are just starting to kick in and will ultimately generate over $1 trillion a year. U.S. Treasury data supports a massive surge in customs revenue, with approximately $214.9 billion collected so far this year. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, however, has offered a more conservative projection, suggesting annual revenue could top $300 billion to $500 billion. The dual-purpose debt reduction and people's dividend. President Trump outlined a clear two-pronged strategy for utilizing the tariff revenue, with debt reduction as the first priority. National debt reduction. Number 1, we're paying down debt, Trump stated, referring to the current national debt of approximately $37 trillion. He characterized this debt as very little, relatively speaking, given the surge in new government income. Distribution to the people. After addressing the debt, the remainder of the revenue would be distributed. With that being said, we'll pay back debt, but we also might make a distribution to the people, almost like a dividend to the people of America, he explained. The concept of a tariff rebate has already garnered some support on Capitol Hill. Senator Josh Hawley, RMO, previously introduced the American Worker Rebate Act, which proposes channeling tariff revenue to U.S. households, suggesting checks of at least $600 per adult and dependent, which could increase if revenue exceeds projections. The legal hurdle. Supreme Court review. The ambitious proposal, which would likely require approval from Congress to be enacted, faces an immediate and formidable challenge from the judicial branch. Legality questioned. Several of the broad tariffs imposed by the administration have faced legal challenges, with lower courts questioning the president's authority to implement them, particularly under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA. Supreme Court hearing. The Supreme Court is scheduled to hear arguments in a consolidated case in early November to definitively determine the legality of the president's broad tariff-imposing authority. Risk of massive refunds. Treasury Secretary Bessent has warned the top court that if the tariffs are ultimately ruled illegal, the government could be compelled to refund a staggering amount between $750 billion and $1 trillion in collected and projected revenue, an outcome that would entirely derail the tariff dividend plan and significantly exacerbate the national debt. Economic debate. Tax or dividend? The idea of a direct tariff payment is politically framed by the administration as a dividend that allows Americans to share in the wealth collected from foreign trading partners. However, the plan is met with strong criticism from many economists and political opponents. Critics view. Opponents argue that tariffs are essentially a tax paid by American importers, who then pass the costs along to U.S. consumers in the form of higher prices for goods like groceries and household items. From this perspective, the dividend would simply be a partial refund of a tax that Americans have already indirectly paid. Alternative proposals. Some lawmakers, like Democratic Representative Ro Khanna, have introduced similar rebate proposals, suggesting up to $2,000 for Americans making under $100,000, not as a dividend of wealth but as an essential offset to the unfair tax of the tariffs that has jacked up prices for working families. Net impact. Economic analysis from groups like the Tax Foundation has suggested that while new tariffs raise billions, they can also increase the overall tax burden on U.S. households, potentially costing the average family hundreds or even thousands of dollars annually and reduce GDP. As the government continues to operate under a partial shutdown, the president's tariff dividend proposal adds a high-stakes economic policy debate to an already tense legislative and judicial environment. Its feasibility hinges not just on congressional support, but also on the imminent Supreme Court ruling regarding the fundamental legality of the new tariff regime.